Good afternoon, everybody. My guest on the podcast today is my friend and fellow podcast host, Michelle Griffin. Michelle is a personal brand strategist and the founder of BRANDthority. And Michelle, you're also the person who knows more about LinkedIn than anybody else I know. And I think we're going to talk about this. If I'm not mistaken, you did a LinkedIn challenge where you posted every day original content on LinkedIn, which just does not sound like fun to me. But you did it. Welcome, Michelle. Good to have you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Jason. What an intro. And yes, all that is true, including being maybe crazy enough to post every single day last year and with original content. But it changed me personally and professionally, and we could talk about that later.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to ask you about that because that does not sound like my idea of a good time. But I'm not a writer like you are. So here we go. That's why we're all created differently. This is why a podcast. I don't want to write anything. I just want to talk to people. All right, Michelle, let's get right into it. So first up for you, what's something you nerd out about?
Oh my gosh. Content creation in the scope of personal branding. I love to create content. I love to write. And I have a podcast, and now I have a second podcast that I co-host that's called the LinkedIn Branding Show. So when you combine branding, personal branding, and LinkedIn and content creation, I geek out and nerd out and love that. You can't shut me up about it. So good thing we're not talking about that.
Well, we can. You're also the only other person I know who has two podcasts, because I also have two podcasts.
Face it, I love to talk too. I love to talk. I love people. I love to talk to people. So the irony is, when I'm working on this, when I'm on LinkedIn creating content, and being a personal brand strategist, I'm trying to be more personable. I love to teach and mentor, but it's hard for me to unpeel myself online, especially because I was in the corporate, professional services, insurance, and legal buttoned up world for so long. So it's a different world than what I'm doing now, but I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that's awesome, Michelle. And you are located where?
Oh, I'm up in Pensacola, Florida, which is like almost Alabama. Yep. When people say Florida, that they think Orlando, Miami. Fun fact that every time I schedule Zoom calls or whatever calls, I'm in Central Time Zone. No one knows that about Florida. That's like a Trivial Pursuit question,
that is. Right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, no one knows that.
The Panhandle's in Central Time.
Well, until you get to like the Chattahoochee River or some river in the middle of the Panhandle, it's Central Time. So fun fact, you all learned something today.
There it is.
Just stuff you needed to know, right?
If you're ever on Jeopardy or at the bar playing trivia, you can think of Michelle saying, part of Florida is actually in Central Time Zone.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I love trivia, so that makes a lot of sense to me. So, all right, Michelle, what's something that is inside of your comfort zone that you know is outside of somebody else's?
Being on camera, talking to people. I don't have any problem going up and talking to someone, asking questions.
Yeah.
Like, we're in a Zoom call or in a group and someone's like, hey, does anyone have questions? I'm like the nerd who wants to get out there and ask the curious questions. So I'm very curious. And so that's my comfort zone. But it wasn't so much comfort zone getting out on LinkedIn and being jumping. But now that I'm doing it, it's fine. But but that's for me. But hey, I don't fault anyone because it's a scary place out there. So, but in just general, I don't mind talking to people and asking questions and getting to know cool people, just like you do here on this podcast, Jason.
Yeah, it's a good trait to have as a podcaster especially when you're interviewing people. What you're a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Your children the same? Do they curious? Do they get that from you?
Absolutely. Let's see. My older daughter is, she's very curious. My second one's more social. So that's a blend of me. And my son, I guess he's a blend of that. So so I guess they do. But here's the thing. I always say there's no dumb questions out there. Always ask questions. You learn so much being a curious mind. And I have learned so much and uncovered things. You uncover things when you ask questions and talk to people. And when I host my podcast, one of them is, more interview based and one's with my co-host. I learn something new every time.
Sure.
And I'm sure you do too.
Oh my gosh.
You have interviewed so many cool people, no pun intended, right?
Oh, I love podcasting, but there is definitely an element of this is very supportive for me to learn about all sorts of things. As a 2-time podcaster, I learn about every single guest I learned something from. I was laughing, and I didn't laugh on air, but I was smiling. You probably saw me. Have you ever heard that there's no such thing as a dumb question, just dumb people who ask them?
Oh, I hadn't heard that part of it. Yeah, maybe that's the question. Maybe something you could actually Google,
Yeah.
But my question's more inquisitive, like to someone like I can't get on Google, right?
Yeah, right.
Just like you get on a podcast when you interview someone. So
yeah.
I love that. That's why podcasting is so cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
It's instant us two having a conversation and you're learning both sides, the listeners learning. It's all good.
Yeah. We're having a conversation like we'd probably just have a conversation, except there's a bunch of people listening to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's one of the things in like strategy and coaching work that from the work you do too, is you ask the question you actually don't know the answer to is a good coaching question. If you already know the answer, you're just driving the conversation or you've got your own agenda. So it drives me like I worked in sales for 20 years. So that's all you do in sales. Mostly in sales, you're asking questions you already know the answer to get somebody to a specific outcome. And just the power of curiosity. And we have we have a 6-year-old. So talk about curious questions. Everything is curious.
Oh, that can be a little wearisome though, when those little kitty questions.
It can be a little
tries your patience. Yeah, because it's obvious stuff, but it's really cool. And I know those times are so sweet. But no, I agree with you because when you get people to talk, they say it in a way that they can't, they just free flow it. And that's what I love when I get my clients to say it. And that's why I hook up like Otter AI, because I'm like, we are recording this because you're not under pressure to write something. You're free flowing and the most beautiful thoughts come out. And sometimes the messaging and positioning will take and using their branding. I'm like, you just said the most brilliant thing. Bingo, there's your answer.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's the beauty of coaching. And we both are coaches. So we both love what we do.
Yeah.
A little bit of twist of strategy, coaching, some hands-on consulting. I sometimes call myself a coach-sultant because sometimes I'll put a little bit of the consultant role in it, which is a beautiful blend to help people get to where they want to go.
Especially when you're somebody who has so much expertise like you do. Sometimes like, why coach somebody to an answer? And you're like, but I actually know the best way to get looks on LinkedIn. Like that's more of to me, that's more of a consulting thing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's take a look at the flip of that question now. And I don't know this about you. I love people that I know. Sometimes I interview people I've never met before. Sometimes I interview people that I know a little bit about. I'm curious, Michelle, what's something that is outside of your comfort zone that you know is inside of somebody else's?
That's I think it's, I love content creation and talking to people, but it really, I say this so many times, I have a hard time showing up online, unpeeling the layers of me. And I kind of referenced that just recently in our, 2 minutes ago, but it's really hard for me. Something I struggle with. And I know like when people meet me, I'm very personable and have good energy, but I have to take off the teacher mode and just be like, hey, this is me, maybe showing up on video. I mean, I don't mind showing up on LinkedIn Lives. I do that all the time because to me, it's just, I'm not thinking about it. But putting videos, like getting on TikTok, that's hard for me, and I'm working on it, which is really ironic because I don't mind getting up on a stage to talk.
Yeah.
Isn't that the irony of that?
Yeah.
So makes no sense, but it's something that I know some people like, oh, that's not hard for me. So we're all different. And that's why we're here to help each other get out of our, comfort zones. But once you get out of the comfort zone, go to that growth zone, watch out, because I've seen that firsthand for me and clients, and it's a game changer. Not sound cliche.
Yeah. I've had a lot of speakers on this podcast, and I think that's quite normal because as a speaker, if you're on virtual or you're in a room, you're looking at all these people. When you create social content, it goes into literally a black hole and you have no idea who's going to see it. You actually don't know who's going to see it because none of us control that. It's not our real estate. It's Microsoft's real estate, and ByteDance's real estate owns TikTok, and Meta's real estate. So we throw that stuff out there and then we hope that it gets traction. At least you can be in a room speaking or on a Zoom and you can like look at people.
Mm-hmm.
And then also they can't generally troll you. I mean, they control you in the chat.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not so much scared anymore after getting out on LinkedIn for a year.
Yeah.
Generally LinkedIn's pretty supportive, as opposed to some other platforms, but that's something you just get comfortable with. But you're right. You read the room when you're preparing a Zoom. People have signed up to see you, be with, paid or whatever. And so you're right. But I'm working on that. And one of the flip arounds is that I have a good friend, and she'll do, and she actually did this for me. It's like a beta testing. She'll take people and have conversations like we do. We'll talk really insightfully, and then she'll clip it out. She calls them golden snippets. And she gifted me with 5 of those recently. And I've put one a week on LinkedIn. I'm like on my 2nd week, and they get a lot of traction. So that's me in the moment. I'm not thinking, I'm overthinking. And I guess that's my thing. I overthink everything. Let's face it.
Oh, do you?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well,
I'm trying to get out of that.
I feel like I'm going to have to chop up this podcast episode and give you some snippets, or I'm going to be letting you down now.
Now I just put the pressure on you, right? I'll have to show you. You can go on LinkedIn and see them. It's really cool, though. No, I think it's a great gift, but she's going to end up doing that as a service. You're doing this as an awesome podcaster.
Yeah.
But we can all take our content and repurpose it.
Yeah.
And, that's one thing I tell my clients. So, but basically that's what I'm doing, and that's, I'm trying to work on. But other than that, things are good,
Yeah. So 5 minutes. I give you 5 minutes. We don't need to take 5 minutes here, but I say, hey, Michelle, I want you to speak to all of us here, the entire world. And yes, we're going to pretend that we all understand English. If you speak in English, if you know other language, we all get you. What would you speak to us on? And what would be your call to action at the end of that speech?
Oh my goodness. I find myself saying this a lot because I struggled with it my first year of entrepreneurship. I hid behind my work, and I thought my expertise, stood by itself. And, you can't rely on word of mouth and referrals, but I'm going to say, put yourself out there. Everyone has a message, a gift, expertise, some unique point of view. And it should be out there because it's a transformation that it took me, I had to literally jump off a cliff and say, I'm going to post publicly 365 days in last year. But it changed everything. It changed the game. It changed me. I was well equipped, like all of us are, but we just don't know. I mean, I've worked with CEOs and lawyers and doctors and all very accomplished executives, and they all have that get out there phase. So put yourself out there however you can, small steps, and don't just stick the toes in, don't get out. So anyway, showing up in line, showing up to step out, to stand out, putting yourself out there, share your expertise, to help others because you have something to give. And I can go on, and that translates into personal branding. But my above all why and mission is I see too many people that are just held back, not sharing their gifts with the world. And personal branding is the way. And you know that too. That personal branding is the way to get out there and really make that impact as a mission-driven messenger. Mission-driven messenger, as some of our friends at BBG say.
Yeah. Well, I had AJ on the podcast a couple months ago. We talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I spoke at an event last night, and it was around like referrals and networking and some stuff that I really enjoy. Actually, I'm weird. I like networking and all those things. And one of the things that I offer to the audience is stop making up our minds for us. So what I hear in that, Michelle, what you're saying is with your content. If you got something to share, stop deciding it's not worthy. Let me decide.
Absolutely.
It might not be useful for me, but I'm pretty darn sure it's going to be useful for somebody.
The right people will find you. And, the beauty about a platform like LinkedIn is, which I'm solely on and do my work and find my clients on and help my clients get out there on, is there are 95% of the people on that platform don't even post content, so they're seeing you. I cannot tell you how many times people have landed my inbox or messaged me or commented, hey, or on a Zoom call, I really love your content. Really love your content. I don't always get to comment or post or whatever, like it, but I really like it. So the thing about it is you're being visible to be valuable. Okay. So I always like to say visibility is not vanity. It's being valuable to help someone else.
That's right.
And that impact is there. So even if you're out there and it takes traction, none of these big creators or anything started off, it starts with one day, one moment, one time, one person. And then it snowballs, and then you'll get the courage. You get the courage to do it. Then you get the comfort. So it's not so much. That's what I realized. You get the courage, then you get the comfort, and that leads to commitment, then consistency. Because you hear that word thrown out about a lot. Consistency. Well, I love to reverse engineer it. How do you get consistent? First, you get the courage, and then you get the comfort level. Same here. I was implanting grooves in my mind. I can tell you how many weekends I'm like, why did I sign up for this, Michelle? Why did you say yes to this? You know, it's on
like
a
it's
Saturday,
the 4th of July.
Sunday.
Everybody else is at a party and I'm like coming up with my content.
I know. And I was the dork who didn't schedule it. I was just every day showing up with a cup of coffee. What am I going to, you know, I had some ideas, of course, but anywho, and then I got the commitment and the consistency. But I'll tell you now, I'm doing like 3 to 5 days a week. I love it now. I absolutely love it, believe it or not. So anyway, that's how you form the basics and change the game for yourself in your business.
Yeah.
And I advocate that. Now, do I advocate you should post every single day on LinkedIn? Heck no, that was just me making a bull. I'm a challenge person. I'm all or nothing. Yeah. So I had to, that's what got me off the cliff.
An all or nothing overthinker, friendly, inquisitive person. I love it.
You're getting me. Exactly.
I think we're all getting you. That's awesome, Michelle. Well, we're going to take a very brief commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Michelle, we're back. So we've learned quite a bit about you. As you can see, Michelle is quite open, which is great. It's a good thing, good quality in a podcast guest. Although I've had some people not quite so open, we end up having a good, cool conversation. So come as you are. Those listening who want to come on, come as you are. Now, Michelle, what else do you want us to know about you?
Oh, that's always a loaded question.
Is it?
No, I'm just kidding. You know, when people ask you that, you could just go off on any tangent. No, I really am just here to, you know, help people. What I really love doing in my work is help people really nailing their niche and their positioning and their messaging, because you've got to get all that out there to really just, you know, feel comfortable and clarify. But other than that, I mean, what else do we what else? What's the fill in the blank here, Jason, that most people ask? Because you can go off on any tangent here.
This is not good. This would not be good coaching if I gave you an answer here, Michelle. I'm going to challenge you to come with something. What else do you want us to know about you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Michelle lives in Florida. She's happily married, 3 kids, standard stuff. I love LinkedIn. I love helping people get out and stand out online and, you know, win their clients, track their clients, and make impact, because I'm not just about clients. We're here for a reason. We have an overall reason, and then that trickles into everything else. And, you know, I've been, you know, don't be stuck. How about this? Here's the life advice. So for my previous role, I worked in the same job, grew it from the ground up, kind of went up, and then I had hit the ceiling. And for 5 years, I kid you not, I wanted to leave my job. And it wasn't really a financial thing. It was just a Michelle thing. I hid, before I got out there, I thought that I needed credentials, certifications, and all these courses. And I went off in this rabbit hole that I didn't need. I mean, I was well equipped, had a master's in PR and had great corporate agency and all this other experience. And I just was freezing behind that and fearful. So I want to encourage you, if you have this inkling to do something big, whatever that might be, don't waste time doing it. Don't hide behind this or that. I promise you have everything you need. And I'll tell you the connect the dots moment here for me. I finally sort of started putting myself out there. Like, I got the bug bit in like July 2015. There's a whole convoluted story. I knew the exact day and everything. Anyway, so about 2 years later, I was still binging on everything. And I started putting myself out here speaking and stuff. And anyway, so one day I spoke at this conference, this like mini little conference for IT tech people. And they said, hey, just can you speak on STEM, you know, whatever. Well, I didn't know anything about STEM or science, technology, engineering, math. I'm a communications, PR, or whatever person. So, you know, STEAM is the new acronym. They added arts to it. So communications and art. So I wrote this presentation and delivered it, how to own your message, how to step out to stand out in your industry. And I wrote the 7-part framework or 7 steps in this presentation. And these were like really introverted cybersecurity IT people. And they all came up to me and it was really well received. And like right after that, it just dawned on me, Michelle, you have been binging on the world and doing all this endless stuff. You just wrote and delivered in a matter of days, this presentation, this framework. And it was just like, duh, you have everything you need. You need to get out there. You need to follow that step that you just told everyone and just do it. And it was just a light bulb moment when I saw how I just on a dime did this and all these people loved it. And so 6 weeks later, I finally got the gumption to resign from my job or give them the exit letter,
Mm-hmm.
which shocked everyone because I'd been there forever. And well, long stories, they offered me a little bit of an incentive to stay 6 more months to, train the next team.
Mm-hmm.
So January 31st, 2020, I left my job. And I cannot tell you the freedom of that moment and also the bittersweet moment because I had finally done it. But then 5 years, you know how much time 5 years is? So that's why I'm here to give people that clarity, the positioning, the messaging, and the momentum and empowerment. Because I never want someone who's sitting on the sidelines to pursue their dreams and feel hidden and held back and like they didn't have it. So
I love that.
I arm them with all the tools they need because here's the thing. You know this because you've seen it. All those courses and certifications are tremendous, but they're very tactical in nature. There's no one, if I would have found someone like me, what I did now, boy, I would have been on fire. I would have been so much farther along, but we can't live in regret. Our story, our struggle is our story. So that's a little bit about my deeper backstory. I just told you earlier, I'm trying to unpeel the layers and
we're creating breakthroughs live on the podcast. Michelle, thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so that's my thing. That's why that's my motto. Put yourself out there. Whatever it is you want to do. Yeah. You have everything you need.
That's awesome.
There's my deeper story, Jason.
There it is. All right. I think we're going to swap out the format and I've got a bunch of really vulnerable questions. No, we're not going to do that. We could next time you're back on. I will. Yeah,
that's phase 2. Yeah. Phase 2.
This reminds me before we get to the next part that I'm a little scared and excited about, which is coming. You're going to ask me something or maybe a couple things. I do facilitation work at this community and it's a group of high-level executives. Vulnerability is not what I'd say is the lean. And we had them, it was their first time meeting and they were doing breakout rooms. And one of our questions was, what's a dream of yours that's still unfulfilled? Part 2. What are you going to do about it? People got very confronted.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. What's a dream of yours that's still unfulfilled? What are you going to do about it? And I don't know the answer because they were I wasn't in the breakouts with them. It was Zoom.
Oh, okay.
But the feedback was that was a very confronting question. So for everybody listening, what's a dream of yours that's still unfulfilled? Mm-hmm. What are you going to do about it? And the answer might be nothing. But own that answer that you're not doing anything about it.
Okay.
And that's it, right? Like there's nothing wrong with nothing wrong. So I'm not asking you about that. You reminded me when you were talking about just getting out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I know what mine would be on that. So
well, now this is my time. I'm going to give you the host rights here.
Oh.
Podcast hostess with the mostest. So Michelle, what do you want to ask me that I'll answer for all of you listening, including you?
Yeah. Okay. So you and I had this conversation, for these awesome listeners. You were on my podcast.
I was a couple months ago. Yeah.
That was a really well-received episode.
Well, I can imagine the guest was unbelievable.
Exactly. Either live or pre-live or after, we started talking about some of those personality questions and discs and all that. And so do you put that much stake into a lot of these personality tests, or which one's your favorite, or which one is the most telling? I want to know.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the ones that I know enough about to be dangerous. I know a lot about a couple. I know quite a bit about one, and then I know medium. So I'm a certified DISC and Clifton Strengths coach. Those are two different things. I know a lot about both of those. I know quite a bit about Myers-Briggs personality type because I really like it. And then I know a little bit about Enneagram because I've taken it, I've read it, and I had somebody walk me through it a couple times. I don't have a favorite. They all serve different purposes. I will tell you that I put a lot of stake in Clifton Strengths, and I'm biased, and I put a lot of stake in it because I use it with my clients and it makes a difference. Because when you look at your strengths, and for those who haven't taken it, you can take it online. It's $50. Hit me up if you want to have a session around it. It tells you what your top 10 strengths are in the context of the way that Don Clifton, that's why they call it Clifton Strengths. It used to be called Strengths Finder.
Mm-hmm.
It's been taken 27 million times. It's very popular.
Mm-hmm.
I think 28 million times now. When you can put a name to your strengths, it's supposed to like, oh, I really like people. I would assert that inside of that, one of your top 10 is something around that, like woo or communication or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes to the work I do with clients when we use Clifton Strengths is, well, how does this apply to your job? Or how does this apply to whatever you're up to? And a lot of times what you find out is people are like they have to lean into things that are not their strengths, which creates dissatisfaction, energy drain, burnout. If you are really leaning into your strengths, and I'm talking about the context in Clifton Strengths, you are going to be having a lot of fun. I'm a good example of that. Because like if I shared my top 10 strengths here, I can directly point at how everything I do in my business has some of those things. And then I can directly point at the things that I don't like doing in my business, paperwork, finance stuff. And be like, yep, there's the things. But the things I actually spend time, money in doing and things like podcasting fills me up. And it's like, that's the idea. It's actually a list of, the way I look at it, it's a list of what gives you energy and what drains your energy. That's what it is. So I believe in these assessments, and I don't believe they're the truth. They're a picture of a moment in time when you took it. Some of these don't shift much. Like Enneagram isn't really going to shift. DISC can shift in the context of the work you are supposed to do. And they're kind of self-fulfilling in a way, because most people who take them, if you take them in a corporate context, you're taking them in the context of, well, what do I get paid to do? So of course you're going to answer in like, what did I do this morning that's going to apply here? Myers-Briggs, I really like as a way to name our personality traits. So I'm an ENFJ, all the way E, slight N, slight F, middle J. It's just a good place to anchor when you're talking about like, oh, that person's always on time, or that person's never on time. That person is so flexible. How'd they get to be so flexible? Oh, that person is an overthinker. You're probably a T, is my guess. Are you a T?
Yeah, ENFT.
Yeah, ENFT. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So, as a way to do it, but again, it's a place to look. And the thing with assessments, we're humans. We have abilities to flex into different things and do different things, and most of us can do that. The assessments are what you gravitate towards, what fills you up, what gives you energy, how you're built, and that's it. So I use them as a benchmark and as an objective place to name things. I don't use them as like, well, you're this, so this is how you are. Because the truth is that's not how most people work.
No, I absolutely am resonating with this on so many levels. And I think you and I are so much alike because, I love podcasting and having my LinkedIn community, which is like 1,000 people. And I'm in there, real quick once a day. And someone's like, why do you do this? Don't I take your time? I'm like, no, this is fun for me. It's easy.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fun. I love it. But we're very much alike. But I wanted to get your take because that's exactly how when I do my high-level coaching with my 8-week program, I ask them to do these personality tests. And I don't say this is the end-all be-all. Yeah. It's just like a little baseline. And I love that. And I want to say from a personal standpoint, I 100% agree with that because when I took one of the strength, there's actually a high five on. Yeah. There's high five test. I think it's a version of the Strength Finders. But anyway,
it's a rip off of. Clifton Strengths is a licensed product, so it's kind of a.
It's a rip off.
It's not. Okay. I mean, it's not a rip off, but it's like, it's actually not. I don't know that it's authorized. It might be authorized, but it doesn't matter.
It was just for fun. But anyway, I do need to do the official one for sure. I need to check you out with that. But anyway, yes. But mine, the ripoff one told me my number one was like a coach. So it was really
that's a different. Sorry, that's just to clarify for everybody. That's a career assessment. I do know that one. High five. It's more a career assessment. It's not Clifton, not a ripoff. I know what it is now. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
It's just a fun little way to see but I need to do the official one, but I want to tell you that lit me up because my first year and a half of my consultancy, other than when I was working with you at Brand Builders doing coaching on my own side, I was doing implementation work. And I realized that is not me. I love coaching and I love strategy. So of fall of last year, 6-7 months ago, I switched 100% to coaching.
Beautiful.
And I have never been happier.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we're bringing this up to teach everyone, or not teach, but, illustrate a lesson that if you're not 100% lit up in what you're doing, and my, assumption here is don't be held back, but in your thing is find what lights you up with these, tests or whatever, because you're going to be happier. Like you and I both spoke a week ago. We love our jobs. We love what we do. It does not feel like work, and we're paid and we have opportunities and, and I can grow in this and that direction. And it's fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Jen, I want to say it's not fun all the time.
No, not all the time. But on the overall, I don't dislike my job.
Satisfaction is great.
Oh, absolutely.
And just encourage anybody.
Perfect.
Yeah. And encourage anybody listening. If that's not what you're feeling, get some help with it. Like, there's paid help. There's talk to a friend. Like, don't, it's not, were you suffering alone other than maybe your husband for 5 years? Were you talking to anybody else about it?
No, yeah, exactly. I didn't really have anyone to talk to, and even
your husband probably got tired of it. Was like, babe, do something about it. You're like, I can't.
I know. He's like, well, just, he told me it 2 years before. He's like, well, just leave your job. And I'm like, but I got to figure it out. I was like in this mode. I got to figure it out.
You're thinking about it.
Went down. Yeah. So anyway, but I just never want anyone to feel suppressed like that and do the jobs. And so this question for you just really brought into the fold these personality tests. I really enjoyed because I know you were certified in a few, and I really loved hearing that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Nice question. Not too scary. That was a genuinely curious question without being no vulnerability from me. Just get to talk about personality assessments. Thanks, Michelle.
Absolutely.
All right, Michelle, what's the thing you're most proud of?
Finally jumping out after 5 years, just really proud of building my business and being able to flex, as you say. I love the word flex now instead of pivot. We're a little tired of pivot here in this world, but
exactly.
To take myself seriously and enough to say, if you don't like this, you don't have to be stuck doing it. So I'm proud of listening to myself and encouraging myself. And I mean that in the utmost non-narcissistic way so that I can be of better service to help people. And, there were some scary things I did in the first 2 years, and I'm doing them, and I'm continuing to doing them. And my next thing, which I haven't done to answer that question you didn't ask me, which you weren't supposed to ask me, but I'm going to interject.
There you go.
And what I want to do is write a book, and I'm actually co-writing a book right now based on and then I'm going to write a book on my 7 steps. But my co-host and I at the LinkedIn Branding Show, we're writing a book called How to Brand Yourself on LinkedIn with personal and company pages.
Yeah.
So we've already, done all the chapters. So we're going to have that out later in the year, putting that out publicly.
Nice.
And she's already written a book on company pages. She's, LinkedIn expert in that area. Yeah. And so we're going to be able to help a lot of people there. And then I'm going to write a book on my 7 steps and then do a few digital courses. But once you have your knowledge, your expertise, it's well positioned and there for the person, the audience you're there to serve. The sky is the limit on how you can grow, and monetize and just make an impact. Because I think you and I are very much aligned in that area as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. We're gonna, as we start to wrap up, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions about book and some other things. But before we do that, I got a vulnerable question for you.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no. I like the whisper. Oh no. Michelle, what's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
It's hard for me to be vulnerable.
That's why we're doing this.
I feel like I'm in a coaching session, publicly.
I'll send you the invoice later. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. As long as you fix the problem.
Exactly.
Or help me fix the problem. I can't get I have too many ideas and not enough action. Okay. I don't want that to be true because I am creative. I'm a curious person. I have tons of ideas sketched out. And sometimes I get scared of myself because I'm like, are you going to take action on this? Because then the procrastination or the over perfectionist comes in, the over analyzer. So I'm a little bit of a mixed bag. So that's what I'm scared of, that I can't take action on these amazing ideas or do it fast enough. So that's what I'm scared of. But I did have some breakthrough moments with some little bit of coaching for some other things lately. So I'm primed and ready, because I'll tell you what, if you're out there, if you're an entrepreneur or whatever, as long as you get that niche and that zone of genius that you know and that you can help people with, I'm just like a whole different person than when I started my business over 2 years ago. Yeah. So that's what I would say. And I'm fighting that and beating that, I think, right now.
That's awesome.
Check back with me later in the year.
Check back with you next week. You're like, yeah, I'm not beating it this week. Well, you actually answered the second part of this question, which is, what do you do to compensate for it? Sounds like perfectionism, overthinking. I would be shocked if what your answer doesn't resonate with so many people listening. It's a very common cycle for creatives. It's like, man, and that can be a tough combination. Coach people like this, where they're like wildly creative, idea generators, vision, coupled with the perfectionism that comes in. And what ends up happening is, again, you make up everybody else's mind about what's good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is, yeah.
That's the opposite of what I teach. And I had to like throw stuff out there last year and just get the heck out. Like, get out of here, Michelle. Get off
365 days in a row.
Yeah, I know. I'm all or nothing. I told you.
I like it. You're like, I haven't posted on LinkedIn for 3 months, so I'm going to do it every day for a year. I know. And I know you posted a few times a week, but that's like, funny.
I told someone, like, it's like deciding to run 3 Ironman when you can't even walk around the block.
Yeah. Okay? You're the only person I've ever met who made it a point to post on LinkedIn like Christmas Day or Thanksgiving. Like, what are you doing for Christmas? Well, the family's all going to be back from college, but before I say hi to them, I'm making a LinkedIn post.
I got to post.
Post on LinkedIn.
I cannot tell you on December 31st how happy my life is.
Oh, you did a calendar year. You're like January.
Oh, yeah, I did calendar year. January 31st to December 31st.
How much of a break did you take after you did the 365 in a row?
I went down to the minimum I did was like 3 days and the most was 5. So I didn't do 7 days. I need my weekends back for sure. I'm a big, I'm really intense on what I do because I create and I talk to people and it's draining. So I need that weekend to reset and refocus.
Yeah. All right, Michelle, let's talk for a minute about podcasting and your company. And then I always like to extract free value from my guests as payback for being on my show. So I'm going to get some LinkedIn knowledge out of you for myself, selfishly, and also for the audience. So first of all, let's talk about your podcast. What are they called? I know you've got one that's been out for quite a while. Is the second one out now, or are you recording? Yeah. It's out. Yep. So
it's out.
Talk to us about the podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
Podcasts.
So the first one, podcast. So the first one actually started as a LinkedIn live show, and then it morphed into the Business of You podcast, and it helps subject matter experts really build a personal brand with a focus on building your business. So I've interviewed subject matter experts, and we're about to launch the 50th episode.
Congrats.
I believe in that. Yeah. So, and you were one of them.
Yeah.
And about 8 episodes ago, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't, something like that. It was really well received. So if you guys are listening, listen to it and hear Jason's backside of your story and everything. It was really good. The second one was the LinkedIn branding show. It launched a couple weeks ago. We have 5 or 6 episodes up, comes out weekly, and it's just us two, or Michelle Squared. It's Michelle J. Raymond, who's my company page expert friend in Sydney, Australia, and Michelle B. Griffin in Florida. And we just bring the personal branding and the company branding side to help. It's actually geared to women, for women, by women, for women, to help them stand up and rise up on LinkedIn. And it's been very well received, and we love just chatting. And so if you need help on LinkedIn, those two, and my podcast actually has a lot of LinkedIn episodes as well. Yeah. So because I really dive deep in that area as well.
Yeah, excellent. And BRANDthority, talk to us about BRANDthority.
Yeah. So it started the first year as, my consultancy. I was a StoryBrand certified guide that, current, I guess you still always are, but I was current that year and I did a lot of StoryBrand work. If you're familiar with Don Miller and all that.
Yeah.
Tremendous community, tremendous amount. Loved the framework. I mean, I started following him in like 2016.
Yeah.
So it was a natural fit, but I just it wasn't a fit for me as far as the implementation work and so morphed into, by the end of 2020, I morphed into personal branding. And then, one of the side businesses, how we met working as the Brand Builders Group in Nashville, which is a phenomenal group of people. Amazing. And then I also went to LinkedIn. Personal branding is huge need.
Yeah.
So been working with that. And I was doing some consulting. I had a mini agency model for a couple months, tested that, but that I really leaned into coaching, but at the beginning of the fall, because that's just my zone of genius. And I have an 8-week coaching program and then a smaller LinkedIn coaching program. So that's what I do. Cool. And, I have a small little team that helps me in the background and with the podcast and all that stuff. But I'm going to be doing some group cohorts and a digital course later now that I've gotten some clarity.
Yeah.
So that it's growing and it's doing well. And the hardest thing is when you love what you do is to manage the time. Yeah. Right. You probably
want to do all of those things.
Exactly.
And more.
I waited so long, right? So it's like, I love it. And so I've got to manage it. So I've got to manage it. My husband's like, hey, are you coming down? Like, 'cause I'm up here in my office and so that's the hardest thing. But I'm saying it's not all perfect either. Let me just make that clear. Entrepreneurship.
You don't have a perfect business?
No.
Oh, jeez. No.
There's ups and downs like everybody, but just when I'm getting that weird, today's not a day, I just have to go out and talk to someone. That's kind of like my medicine. So
good thing you're a podcaster.
I learned a lot. Yeah. Thank goodness. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, one of the things I am going to try to do, I'm going to rebrand my podcast a little bit and have more solo shows because highly recommend if you are a podcaster, if that's your, have some of your own expertise come out. And I bring that with my clients, like interview guests because you'll meet amazing people, but we want to hear from you as well.
Yeah.
So that's some tidbit I'd like to share.
I love that. All right. I'm going to extract some value from you here. All of us here, like we know that our LinkedIn is what it could be. What would you say people should go and do now? Their LinkedIn, pull up their browser, they open it. What's the first thing you'd have them look at to do that they can do right now? Quick actionable tip.
Yeah. Make sure your headline speaks to who you are, who you help, and like how you're positioned now, because that headline is what follows you everywhere and people connect with you, you comment, they see you in the feed. One tip is like if the first 50 characters, you want to make sure that I always say, like in journalism, people say, don't bury the lead.
Yeah.
Don't bury the highlight point on your headline, because I see a lot, and I help clients do this too. I'm like, oh my goodness, whatever you just said toward the end of this headline, let's move it up so that people in that nanosecond can see what you do. And that is going to help start a conversation. Or if you're the right person for them, maybe they'll pull down your profile and look at your content and all that, or connect with you or follow you. One little tool that you can do is go to wordcounter.net and punch in your little headline and see how many word or characters it is. That's actually a great tool if you have to do numbers instead of, it's wordcounter.net. And so just take a look. Am I just saying I'm VP of blah, 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 or do I have a benefit statement? Am I saying what I am for who I am at least? Because I'll say some people just have vice president. I'm like, well, that could be anywhere, right? Yeah. So we want to make sure we know who you are and who you're for and who you help. So
love that.
Take a peek at that. Yeah. And that's one actionable takeaway right there.
I love it. Yeah, definitely follow Michelle on LinkedIn. She's there sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot. Michelle.
And I have a community too. If you want to just get on LinkedIn. Yeah. That's if you're just getting your legs on LinkedIn, that's where I help newbies and just getting started.
Love that.
With some tips every day.
Lots of value.
Training. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Michelle, last thing for us, tradition on the show, words of wisdom. These words of wisdom should fit on a Post-it note or a very small graphic on LinkedIn. I usually say Instagram, but for you, I'm going to go to LinkedIn. Something small, short and sweet. What do you got for us?
Okay. I've already said a lot of my things, but I'm going to say something overall. Enter the moment.
Enter the moment.
Enter the moment. These moments matter. Okay. These moments, we're also busy. We're also busy on social media, doing our job, doing everything. When you're freaking out or having a moment or just nothing's going your way, just stop and go enter the moment and just either be very grateful of what's happening now. Like here I am, or just pay attention, because I promise you, you'll come back to center. I'm not some woo-woo person, but I used to say live in the moment. That was my saying for 10 years, but now it's enter the moment, because I can't even live in the moment until I enter it. So when you get that moment where you just stop and just pay attention to the present, it will bring you to center. And I know I do yoga. I'm not a yogi, but that's one of the words they use. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, it will help you stay focused and be grateful. And that's all we need right now to just help us live in the moment, to get through the moment.
Yeah. Love that, Michelle. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on. Glad we made this happen. Can't wait to have you back on in a couple weeks and talk about whether or not you're in flow or not now. You're like, it was so good 2 weeks ago. Now I'm just confused again, which is a very normal part of the process.
The overthinking will get me, but no, thank you so much, Jason. Yeah, I know we talked about this for so long. We could talk forever, but we'll
have you back again. Thank you so much, Michelle. Everything you just mentioned to everybody listening will be in the show notes as well. Please check out Michelle, connect with her, and give her some likes and hearts and insight and curious and all the LinkedIn stuff. And Dis, thank you so much. Best wishes to you and the family. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.